What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Mandem Read. You're joined today by yourself.
Rewind.
Well, what's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Mandem Read. You're joined today with your boy B,
Pat,
Jamal.
and today we're joined by a special author today, aka Neef. I want to say your full name, bro, but I don't want to.
No,
So please, can you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yeah, that all good. I'm Aniefiok Ekpoudom, also known as Neef, writer, now author.
Aniefiok.
Yeah, Aniefiok.
Okay.
where's that from?
It's from Nigeria.
Okay.
I thought the name was Ghanaian.
Yeah, people always think I'm Ghanaian. I always get that.
I was thinking it sounds a bit okay, cool.
But it's from
What tribe?
Was that Yoruba? Was it?
Nah, Anang. So it's like a smaller ethnicity. But
Yeah.
So it's a lot of people think I'm from Ghana when they see my name and when they see me as well.
I get that too, man.
No, for real.
Cool. So today we're here basically reviewing his book today, Where We Come From, which is a book about, how do I describe this, but rap music, the culture, and life in Britain. So it's not like American rap, it's a more UK based.
Yeah,
It's like where everything started to where it is now, right?
Yeah, that's a good way
Is
to
it
put
like
it.
where colored like black people came from?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it as well. It's kind of looks at, it's like a social history of UK rap and grime, but then beyond that, looks at the history of black communities across Britain, and then looks at, I guess, the personal stories, tells kind of history through the personal stories of people that have shaped the music, and then I guess been impacted by the music as well. So I'm happy to finally have it out there. It took a long time to write. So
what brought you to write this book?
I've been writing for a while. I've been writing, when I first started writing, when I was just in my last year of uni, I was writing for I was blogging for Link Up TV and places like that. So I was always writing about the music, and because I grew up listening to it, so I always had an interest in it. And then I always had it in the back of my head that I would love to write a full-length book about it one day, because I always felt like, I don't know, like when you'd see the coverage of the musicians, I never thought it really hit the cultural resonance they were actually having with people. Like if you'd read about, I don't know, like a Gigs album in the newspaper or something, it would never really hit why is this album so impactful amongst people? So I wanted to kind of do something that explored that. That's where the ambition started. And as I went on and I started traveling around the country and doing interviews, I was I'd love to write a portrait of modern Britain at the same time, using rap and the stories as a vessel to do that.
Okay, so when you was writing those chapters, you was in those places.
Yeah, I went to all these places.
Makes sense now.
Yeah. I went to all these.
Makes sense.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. I went to Wales, Birmingham, Coventry, West Bromwich, all these, Newport, Cardiff.
Did you go Derby?
London. No, I didn't actually. I didn't, because I split up by doing South London, the West Midlands, and South Wales. So West Midlands is I guess Derby's the East Midlands, right?
I've got to pause you right there. What, you just did South London?
Those people have been.
Oh my God! You didn't even go East London?
No, because I feel like
people. What's going on there?
you know what it was. I feel like there's already 3 or 4 books on East London, so I was like, I don't want to just be saying the same thing that people have already said.
Across the Grime with us.
So I was like, there's good there's an author called Joy White. She wrote a sick book on similar to this, the origins of the community in East London, that kind of thing. There's a few other books, Dan Hancock did a book, DJ Target did a book. So I
read Target's one.
Yeah. So I was like, they've kind of told that story.
Can I ask you a question? Quick question. Are you a noughties baby, 90s baby, 80s baby? Because I'm trying to gauge what kind of music you actually grew up with.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in 92.
Okay. So you
Grime.
Grime.
Yeah, definitely grime, definitely at first like that.
You'd have just kind of missed the garage.
Yeah, I just missed the garage because I didn't have older siblings and stuff like that, so I didn't get it from them.
Yeah.
So definitely grime in school. You've got listening to through. You put your headphone through your jumper, that kind of thing. Yeah. That was me.
Set tapes, recording sets or you might have did that.
I didn't do that, but I was listening to. I remember it was who was it? It was Logan Sama, I think. He had the Kiss show on a Monday. Yeah. I was listening to that.
Oh, wicked.
Reason why I said Derby, because in the first chapters of the book, you kind of detailed how the West Indians came over in the Windrush, and you named all these places in the West Midlands. But you missed Derby. That's where my grandparents came and said.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the way you detailed it is exactly the stories my grandma used to tell me.
Oh, no way.
About when they used to come, like a lot of them came, like they were on construction sites in the hospitals. My grandma was a nurse, and like she used to detail like the struggles that they used to go through during work and being called names and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very detailed. Like when I was reading it, a part in the book where the lady was is it Esme?
Yeah,
Esme Lancaster.
Yeah.
So she was in a workplace, and like she could hear like the white people like talking about her, and like she just kind of came up front like we're here to stay. They're used to it kind of thing. So that's the kind of attitude my grandma had. Like she didn't let no one like batter her down. But she told me the stories of what used to happen and how real it was. But yeah, you kind of. I wanted to send that book to my grandma, man, so she can. I'll read it to her.
No, thanks. Hearing those stories like firsthand was it was humbling in a lot of ways to hear like what people really went through and what they had to battle through to even just do the most simple things like go to work peacefully, or to even just like being able to exist in your own community without like the constant harassment. Like I sat with like quite a few elders from like Birmingham, Nottingham, and they all had like very similar stories, which was interesting to hear as well, especially like coming from like West African background where my parents came in like the 80s. Most of the people in my family came in the 80s, so I never had that experience of talking to people, black people anyway, who were here in like the 50s and the 60s. So that was quite an amazing thing to be able to sit and hear from them, like how essentially like how we got to the place where we're at now, like where a lot of that starts.
So when you were traveling in those places like around the Midlands, what city would you say was the most shocking in terms of seeing our culture over there? Because you know how we live in London. If you ain't travelled out there, you don't really know what's going on out there, except for through the music. But when you're there, what one was the most shocking?
There was a few. I remember going to Birmingham, and obviously I always knew like Birmingham's got a big black community, and obviously Birmingham's a big city in general. But I think Birmingham's because it's slightly smaller than London. So I think like the ratio of like ethnic minorities, I think is a lot higher in the end. But then it was just mad just seeing like going. One thing I do when I get to every place, I'd get the bus to places just so I could like go through the actual places of the areas. And so
how long's the waiting time for a bus in Birmingham?
It wasn't that bad, to be fair, when I was in the centre anyway. But then you go getting the bus through like Handsworth and all of these places, and you're like seeing like it's just like London, it's just a kind of a mirror in that sense.
You know what's quite interesting, obviously you just mentioned like Handsworth and like Birmingham and whatnot. Like my mind just went straight Handsworth, Soho Road. I've never been to Soho Road, but from the music I know about these places. Like you said, like it's weird because music kind of
introduces you, innit?
Introduces things, and So that's pretty cool. What was Handsworth like when you went through there? I know.
Birmingham's like is a mad place. I think you can really see when in the book I talk a lot about like pirate radio and stuff like that, and how like Britain getting like bombed to pieces in the war, and then like people rebuilding it after. But in Birmingham, like they had this thing where because it was an industrial place and it got bombed so much, they put up so many like council estates afterwards to rebuild it. But like when you go to past those parts of Birmingham, like it's just high rises everywhere. And then you see like how people then turn that into like foundations for the music. People literally were putting pirate radio stations all over those places. So like Handsworth was like kind of like listening to Birmingham Grime MCs growing up. I was like, okay, like this, the picture you guys have been painting, like this makes sense from what you've been speaking about.
Well, it was just a hood.
Yeah. But then also probably the biggest place for that would be I went to Coventry to this place called Hillfields where Parsalou's from, because there's a chapter from Parsalou.
I was like, oh snap.
Yeah.
Where's Mandem?
Yeah, that place, that was like I'd never been to Coventry before, like, and it wasn't one of those places where I was super familiar with. Like Birmingham, I was obviously a bit more familiar. Places like Manchester, you're a bit more familiar with, but Coventry, I just had no idea. Then you like go to this place Hillfields, and like the picture he paints of it in his music is like, it's that and 10 times more. And when you're speaking to like the community leaders and the youth workers, they're like, what the kids are exposed to here from like 8, 9, 10 years old, they're like living through trauma that is, I think there's a quote in the book where someone says they're living through traumas that like an adult should, like her as an adult who's moved to the area just has never experienced before. So seeing that, I was like, wow, like there's a lot of places in the UK that are really struggling, and you wouldn't even know it unless it was for. That's why I think why rap is so powerful in that sense, in that pulls you directly.
We're kind of in our bubble over in London, aren't we?
Yeah.
A big bubble.
So what did you study at uni?
I did law. So yeah, I did that. yeah.
So then what inspired you to not to write the book, but to become a writer? Like,
I think it was because I did law because it was like I had like West African parents, Nigerian, Cameroonian parents. Like, oh, you need to do something that's good. Like you need to do something that's gonna get you. Yeah, I'm half Cameroonian, half Nigerian.
Did Cameroonians make jollof?
Yeah. They would say better.
So
like, Cameroonians.
which one's better?
I need to know.
Cameroon.
What, you speak French in that as well?
No, so that with Cameroon, it's like 80% French, 20% English, and then like, my mum's from like the English side.
Okay.
This is like colonialism, just like carved up the country essentially. But yeah. You know what's funny is the best jollof I had is when I went to Ghana. I can't even lie. That was yeah. But
Well, I can't lie, I've had the best jollof in Gambia.
oh yeah, I guess I heard they're the originators, right? So
Yeah,
it all
I
makes
saw
sense.
you're half Ghanaian or something.
Yeah, but my belly tells me that Oh no, it's good. But when I had the Gambian one, like they use like similar peas to like what they use in rice and peas, like the gunga peas,
yeah.
like pigeon peas, I think.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, yeah. So,
Yeah.
what if you were to summarize this book in like a sentence? How would you summarize?
A sentence, interesting. I would say it's I'll definitely say it's a history and it's a telling of the stories of people who have shaped and been shaped by the music, because I think that's the big thing in terms of like a lot of people have been surprised in how like I guess story-led the book is, and because it's non-fiction, I think sometimes people have an idea of non-fiction that it's going to be like quite like a rigid listing of like facts, like in this year this happened and this year this happened, whereas you're really going into people's like inner lives and inner worlds, and that was like a big thing that I wanted to do. So I'd definitely say that it's like kind of, it's very narrative driven essentially. So that's why I always say it's like, it's the story, it's the history told through people's personal stories essentially, is how I would put it.
Saying that, so we all like read a chapter or two, random ones that we haven't even spoken about.
Okay, yeah.
I ended up reading 9 to 5.
Okay,
So that was kind of like heavily based around cadets.
Yeah.
Struggle, like going through working and trying to seeing his brother Crep doing his cousin Crep doing his thing and Conan doing his thing. Cause I know you said was you there when you was writing those?
Oh no, I wasn't there for those.
Very detailed. Like what Cadet was doing, and also what was it his work colleagues that he met and all sorts. How did that come to? How did you put that together? Yeah,
so the cadet story, his story kind of runs all through the South London section. Right. And then with him, I was always listening to his music, and then when he passed, I was just seeing like the reaction and like how much it impacted people, because it impacted me, but then seeing how much it impacted people, then also seeing like how much people were trying to keep his like legacy alive. So I was like, I'd love to kind of tell that wider story of who he is, what his music meant to people, and also like talk about where he's actually come from. And then so to do that, I spoke to his mom, his sister. Then the scenes in 9 to 5 where I think it's at a point where he has kind of like, he was making music like at like 15, 16, like, as everyone was, and then kind of gave it up and went to get like just a normal job. He was working in like, I think is it Coral? He was working in William Hills. He was working in William Hills, and then wanted to go full swing at music, but I guess felt like scared, all of these things. And so I spoke to a lot of his work colleagues around it, and they would give me details of like when he first came in the office and he'd have like a big cadet hoodie on, or he'd be rapping to himself at lunchtime, or they'd be rapping outside, or seeing him like not taking it as seriously as he should when they were all telling him that he should. So a lot of that stuff came from like a lot of his close friends that I spoke to.
Okay, so you done proper detective work, innit?
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask about the research that goes into writing a book and getting all these stories. Like, where was like your starting point, and what is like your method when you're doing this kind of research?
Yeah, the research was like intense. It was like, I must have done over 60, 70 interviews. But where it started, like where my interest in like literature in general is like, there's this like genre of nonfiction called like creative nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, where essentially people do this, like they spend time with people and then spend enough time where they can like, I guess, confidently tell the story of someone from their own eyes. So I was like, I'd love to bring like that study of like humans essentially to Black British people, because I don't think we've necessarily had that as much. So it's like a blend of reporting, which is like just essentially like just being there as much as you can, with a lot of the interviews, especially in like Birmingham and Wales. Like I did these interviews over like 5 years. So some people I'd sit with them like, I wouldn't sit with them every day, it might be every few months, but I was doing it over a process of 5 years. So I really got to know them, got to know their friends, got to know their family, and then heard the story so many times that I could then feel confident to tell them myself. So that's where a lot of the research was. And then secondary, there's like, there's like a lot of, like desk research, like book research, like reading. But I didn't read that many music books. But one thing I did do was I spoke to university lecturers, which was a really big help, especially in like spaces like Birmingham and Cardiff, where I wasn't as familiar with like just the history of the area as I would be with London. Speaking to university lecturers, like sociology lecturers, they would like give me essentially the rundown of like, this is the history of this community, this is like the economic history, this is the social history, this is like what has affected this community, and this is how this community got here. So I did that for Wales, I did that for Birmingham too.
You got paid for that or?
No, they would. Yeah, we just did it on. They were just open to it, so that was like a big chunk of it too.
So what was it taking about 5 years to write a book? Or?
Yeah, it was about 5 years. I think I started 2018, and then I finished it 2023, and then it came out 2024.
So what was like the biggest challenges? Because obviously, like you're going around traveling, and that sounds like a challenge in itself.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest like headaches and?
I think definitely with a book, the biggest challenge I think is, especially when it's your first one, is like kind of how to structure it. Because in the end, I knew there was about 7 or 8 stories I wanted to focus in on. But then that's 7 or 8 people's like individual lives that have all these different strands, and then you have to make that fit into like a narrative that makes sense and that takes a reader through from point A to point B. So like trying to figure that out was probably like the most difficult part of it, I would say. But it was exciting as well. It was good. I feel like I learned a lot about myself and my craft by going through that process.
Okay. Have you always wanted to be a writer? Because if you see, you did the law, but you said parents influenced that decision, but have you always wanted to be a writer?
No, not even, I think I always liked reading. Reading for sure. And then I think it was when I did law, and then like by the first week I was like, yeah, this is dead. I don't like this. So I was like, but then I was like the last year where if I left, the fees would get trebled. So then if I left,
powering through, by the way.
Yeah, no, it was a struggle, but yeah, I powered through. But I think doing something I really didn't like made me then like kind of swing that way. I need to do something that I actually really enjoy outside of this, because law is like a lot of reading, it's a lot of writing. So I was like, I need to try and find stuff that I enjoy. Late hours.
So how were you like juggling that for 5 years? Because obviously, I'm guessing you weren't well, I don't know what your situation was before you wrote that, but I guess you were juggling that with law, right?
No, so I'd left, by the time I was writing this, I'd left uni. I'd started this like, so I left uni.
You was working?
Yeah, I was working,
Okay,
so I was freelancing.
You were putting in extra.
Yeah, I was putting extra, but I was freelancing, so I freelanced. I was doing like freelance journalism and then freelance like media stuff. So that allowed me to be, I guess, like have the flexibility to go to these different places because I had a bit more control over my own schedule.
So you had a passion for writing straight after uni, so when you discovered it, sort of thing, and then you got into journalism.
Yeah. So probably last year of uni, I started just writing like blogs and stuff like that. Like I had my own blog, and then so it was definitely just a passion at that point.
What was the name of the blog?
I think it still might be live somewhere. What was it? It was like, I think the first one was like Chronicles of Neef or something like that.
Okay.
So it's like,
heard of that.
if you have like, no, fair enough. Because that was like that was legit like 10 years ago.
No, maybe I'm just saying that because you're here. But
So who are your, like growing up or even now, who are your favorite authors? If you like your top 5 or top 3.
I've got my top 3 authors would probably be there's a lady called Jacqueline Woodson in America. She's like she's a novelist, and she writes about like, she's from like New York, so she writes a lot about essentially like Black American experiences, Black American stories. But she's like an amazing writer, like very like lyrical in how she writes. Then there's a second one, Joan Didion. She's like she's passed away now, but she was around in like the 60s is when she first started to come up. But she's like a journalist who kind of was one of the pioneers of that like creative nonfiction that I'm talking about. So like taking techniques from fiction and then applying it to like journalism and nonfiction. And then a third one, I don't really have a third, I would say. It was more just I have just favorite books that just are in that space.
So they would say like they are top authors. Do you have one favorite book other than your own?
Other than my own.
That's a bit hard one,
so let me double up on it. Do you have a favorite book, or is there a book that influenced you become
There's this book. There's this guy called Gay Talese. He's like an American. He's like an Italian American guy, but he wrote this. He was like another one that wrote like that kind of creative nonfiction. But he has this book called Honor Thy Father. And to this day, I don't even know how he did it, but he's ended up like embedding in with like the Bonanno crime family in like in New York. But essentially, for over like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, he just was with this guy, and then told like the guy's family history and the guy's story, Joseph Bonanno, through this book. But when you read it, it reads like you think you're reading a novel, and I remember reading it like just going to double fact check like this surely like isn't real, because like the level of detail was insane. So I was like, how did you get to spend so much time with someone who's notoriously going to be quite reserved?
This was after it all happened, right?
This was after. And then just like his style of writing is like just pulls you in like so quickly. So that's like the book that definitely set me down the path of even like wanting to read more. I think like everyone, when you get into reading, you need like that push of what is that book that gets you interested in actually reading more. And that was definitely one for me.
What book did you do in secondary school?
What did I read? We did.
Did you do Macbeth, Shakespeare?
We did Othello, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
I think Othello's the only one I didn't do. You know?
I didn't do that one.
Othello.
Really?
Othello,
Yeah,
the
we
only
did
nigga
Othello.
in Macbeth. The only nigga, not Macbeth, in Shakespeare.
I don't know that. Sorry,
You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, he's like, well, he what's the story of Othello? His girl cheated on him.
Something like that.
Do you have a favorite part of the book, or a favorite passage, or a passage that you can read out to our viewers from your head, like, or any that kind of any what's your standout chapter? Or
I think there's a few. My standout chapter, I think, would be there's a chapter. I think it's chapter 6 or 7. It's called Dirty South, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's like it looks at the it's the first chapter about Cadet, but it starts by telling like his grandma and his other grandma's story in South London, but then uses that and eventually explores like the history of grime in the area through his life and through like Crep's life, and then through all of the kids around Clapham, Croydon, Brixton that were making it at the time. And then talks about the shift from grime to UK rap with like gigs and PDC and that kind of thing. And then talks about street DVDs, but then it's done, I guess, like, as I say, like through like some real 3 or 4 people's like journeys in that. So that's like that's definitely my favorite chapter, I would say, that you have got yourself.
Another question: how do you build relationships with people you're basically doing research with, and then how do you maintain them?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I guess part of it is like, because by the time I started the book, I was already doing like a lot of journalism. So some of the people I already had relationships with in that sense. And I was already freelancing for a few places, but others it was just like trying to show them that, just like being a genuine person. I feel like people have like a skepticism, which I get, to be fair, of like, if they hear like journalism, there's like a skepticism.
Green Street straight away.
So I feel like so it's like trying to show people like, I'm actually trying to tell like an authentic story here. And then I think just like being in contact with people, I think was a big thing, like keeping going back to these places, keeping going back to speaking to people. And then I think gaining trust slowly that way, I think was a big part of it, for sure.
And would you say you built friendships, or is it kind of?
No, definitely. Yeah, I've made like bare friends from the book since in the process. That's been like one of the surprise, but like really nice things of like, there's people now that I'm actually friends with, like that guy in Birmingham called Despot, whose his story makes.
Despot.
Like, I think
Stay fresh.
Yeah, Stay Fresh. Yeah, Stay Fresh, Despot. And now he manages like JK. And artists like that. But I think when I first met him, I think his son was the first interview we did for the book, which was the very first interview I did for the book. His son was like, I think was in like a push day. His son was like a few months old. And then by the time we did like the last time I saw him before finishing it, his son was like walking and running around the house. And so I was like, right, I've actually like been spending time with you for so long that I've seen like
the growth.
Yeah, the growth of like his children and stuff like that. So that's been a really nice.
And how do you make the initial contact with him? Like, do you DM?
He was one of the people I knew from already, so I already knew him. But some people was like, it was like DM or email, like when I was going to Wales, because I'd never been to Wales before. And so it was like a lot of just cold emailing people, like, I'm writing this book. Would you be interested in chatting to me? Can I come down to Wales or Cardiff and chat to you? And do it like that, and then slowly build it up that way. But yeah, a lot of it was like kind of cold emails, finding people's emails, and just essentially just taking a chance and seeing what they say.
Where else did you go?
I went to Cardiff, Newport, and then I went to the South Wales valleys. But like Cardiff was like the most surprising place because they've got like one of the oldest. Like, I could talk about in the book. They've got like one of the oldest black communities in the UK, which I just had
Seriously?
I had no clue about.
West Indians or African?
A mix. Like that was the interesting thing is like because it's like right by the docks, so there's like
that would make sense.
People going in and out. So you'd get there. I remember this one guy just showed me like his picture of his great granddad's wedding from like 1903.
Wow.
And it was like his great granddad. His granddad was from Barbados. Groomsman is from Nigeria. Next one from Somalia.
The accent connected, the Welsh accent, the Barbadian.
I think they've lost it now. It's been like 4 generations, so it's been like over 100 years. So like, the accent's gone.
If I'm not mistaken, is it West Country and like people from Wales went over to Barbados?
Okay, right. I didn't know that.
It sounds kind of similar, innit?
Oh, is it? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just,
But yeah, that was like a crazy
Wow,
piece of
nice
history.
one. I didn't think.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. But yeah, they've got a super long.
so that was your first book, yeah?
Yeah, this is my first
So,
book. Yeah.
so how did it feel when the book was complete? Like what's the process? Because I imagine a writer,
Yeah.
and you're locked away in your cabin somewhere, and you're on the typewriter, and then you got the pages. When you make a mistake, that's like the old school.
Yeah.
So how are you? You're typing up on your word processor,
Yeah.
and then you're submitting it to who?
And so you submit it to like you've got like an editor who works with you on it. So my publisher is called Faber and Faber, and then so that
Faber and Faber.
Yeah. And then I had a few editors because my initial editor, she ended up leaving, but you like kind of write your first draft, submit it to your editor, then they have a look, read through, they make like notes on like detailed notes like structural notes, all of these things.
Are you battling with them on like changes? Like, oh, you need to change this one.
No, I had a good experience with it. I didn't really have that where it was like, because I think especially with writing a book, you have to be like open to people's critiques and feedback. Whereas I think going from doing journalism, which is like say like 1,000 words, 2,000 words, 3,000 words, it's easier to like see the piece yourself. Like you can have a lot more control over it because you can. It's not that long essentially, but then when I think the first draft came in at like 105,000 words. So it's like at a point you can't see that anymore clearly. Like you need someone else that's gonna be a bit further back from the process, a bit removed, to be able to let you know where you've gone too far in certain things, where certain things aren't working in the way that you thought they were. So yeah, well, you work with your editor a lot, and then it's a long process though. After the first edit, then you have second edit and your second draft, then you have like third edit and third draft. Then it goes to a thing called like a copy editor, who they are then looking for like the smaller details, like like you said this, you repeated a certain word like 67 times in the book, like trying to say less, or you said like this guy was born in 1992, then on page 89 you said he was born in 1993, like which one is it? So like going through and
spelling mistakes and all that stuff as well.
Spelling mistakes. Then you have like a final proof editor who does like the spelling mistakes and all of that. So it's a very long it's a long process, but good in that way.
So is this an editor that you met prior to starting, like while you were still a journalist?
No. So I met them. So how it worked was like I worked with like an agent, like a literary agent, to then like you put like together like a proposal, and then they sent it off to like some publishers, and then Faber got in contact, and then I went and met my editor. Her name is Alexa. So I met her, and I was like, okay, she seems actually like cool, and she seems like very smart as well. So I was like, this feels like a good publisher to go with. So I met her like in that process. Yeah.
Fair play. And it's like, does it work in like in like a contract, or so like for people that are starting to become writers and authors and whatnot? How does it work with publishers and editors?
So as in like, what's the
like? Do you got like a free book contract or?
Oh, okay, yeah. So everyone's is different. So like some people like, I know I've got friends that sign like 2 book contracts, but I guess you kind of negotiate with at the time. So I think in fiction, they're more likely to do like 2 book contract, 3 book contract. Mine was just for 1. So I did like a book contract, and then I think a lot of people, I guess, if they have a good experience with their publisher, end up staying and whatnot. So
is that also based on what you've already got out there? What the blogs and whatnot?
Oh, in terms of that, like the deal you get. Yeah, I think part of it is, especially in this like day and age, and definitely publishers definitely look at, especially if you want to write non-fiction, like the first thing they're going to ask you is like, why are you the right person to write this book? Like, where say like fiction is like, you don't need to be an authority on a subject. It's just it's a story, so anyone can say it. Whereas like with non-fiction, and you're talking about a specific subject, they're gonna be like who are you in this space to tell this story? So they're gonna be. I had like a backlog of like journalism that was doing with like The Guardian and GQ, and then
because you need some credibility before you print a book, right? Otherwise, anyone can just actually that's a good point, because in my mind, I'm thinking anyone can just write a book, get it published, and that's it. But they kind of check your credibility and why are you.
Technically, anyone could just write a book and get it published.
Yeah.
But what I was saying, but to be with a credible publisher, they'll probably ask proper questions, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying?
So that's the difference between a credible publisher and just like, these are the differences between publishers. You might find a good one and a
but I think you can still definitely find good publishers that won't ask for that level of thing, because I know there's like even like independent publishers and stuff like that. I know some people that have released like 6 books on independent publishers quite early on into their careers. It's just more like finding like the right space. I think definitely like it definitely helps like if you're going to write a book about a specific subject, if you like have like a history in that subject. But even I think outside of that, I think you'd still be fine. And I always think like now with books, because books is so different to coming from like music background, where I was doing a lot of music journalism, working in music industries, like everything is so focused on like the first album, like the debut album needs to be the big thing. And so your kind of mind is trained to thinking like that's like the first thing is the be all end all. But in publishing, it's like the opposite. They say like they're kind of just waiting for you to hit your stride in like your 6th or 7th book. Like most authors aren't hitting their stride till they get to their 40s, 50s. So there's less pressure, I think anyway, on like a first book, because it's like they're not expecting you to be the full package at like age 30, if that makes sense.
So it's a thing where it becomes easier as you gain experience.
I think so, yeah, because now I'm like, this was the hardest thing to write. The first one was the hardest to write. I know, like now.
So what lessons have you learned from this one that you would?
Yeah, one thing I learned is just like how I like to approach work. I feel like that was a big thing in terms of knowing just like what's my writing routine going to be. Like how long can I concentrate for before like the words just turn to garbage, essentially, like those kind of things. And then also just learning like how to read like very specifically for like the type of book you're trying to write, them kind of things. And then just like I've even learned like when I read back certain passages, I'm like, I know for a second book I wouldn't write that in this kind of way. I'd change like the wording, or I'd notice like traits in my writing that I would tweak or try and progress. So that's been a big thing. And I think also just the confidence of knowing like, okay, you actually know how to do it. Like you did the first one, like you've done it, like you can actually do this again.
Was it hard submitting the final draft?
No, but that was just relief at that point. You're like, just take it. I've looked at this too many times.
Like, this is my baby. It needs to be perfect.
The first draft, I would say, was like that, and then when you get to the final draft, you're like, you've seen this thing so many times. And then you do like the audio. I did the audio book as well. So you read it through.
Did you voice it?
Yeah, I voiced it.
You got a good speaking voice, by the way.
No, thank you.
You know what I'm saying? It's very well spoken, articulate.
So is that on what's it, Audibles?
Yeah, it's on Audible, and it's on Audible at the minute. So I did the audiobook, and then you read the audiobook for like, we did that 6 days or so. So by the time you get to the final draft, you're like, I don't need to see this again for a few months.
What's the experience of doing the Audible? Are you just literally reading a book?
Yeah, you're in a studio and you've got like a producer in like the other room, and then you're kind of you're reading it, and then you've got like pace it, and then he's telling you like, stop, can you read that again? Can you do that bit again? It's intense though. It's like, I think we did 4 days in a row. Like it's like,
how many hours a day?
10 till 5. So you're 7
shift.
hours. Yeah. It was good because I did the audiobook in like November. The book came out in January. I did the audiobook in like November times. And it was good because you end up going, when I submit the last draft, say like March last year, you haven't read the book in a while. So then I was like, oh snap, like the book's coming out, I'm gonna have to talk about the book. Like doing the audiobook, you really get to read it intensely over 4 days, and it kind of acclimatizes you.
You see with Audible, how many times have you listened to it?
I haven't listened to it.
It's like with a podcast yet.
Yeah.
I can't stand the sound of my own voice. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so how's it feel? You heard a little
I've never, even like the book, I don't even read the book that much like myself. This is a crazy thing.
I can imagine you probably like, you put it there.
all the drafts.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't get they get other people to read the
I think with fiction especially, like they get a lot of other people to read it. Like even when I was doing the audiobook, you meet people in there that are recording someone's fiction book, where there's like characters and those kind of things, like they have people do it. But I know for a non-fiction, they say like a lot of authors read their own non-fiction because it's like you probably know the book best in that sense.
So if you could to that camera, if you could tell like what advice you give like to young aspiring writers who want to publish their first book, get the first book.
I would say to a young aspiring writer trying to publish your first book, the thing I would say is like treat it like a job. Like there's a real, I think sometimes like we kind of over romanticize like the writing process of thinking like you need to be in a certain space to do it, or you need to go away from like to like a cabin or something like that and do it. But really you just need to set yourself, like be disciplined with your time, set yourself, even if it's an hour every day, lock that hour down, don't plan anything around it, put your phone on silent, leave it in another room if you have to, and just consistently do that every day and build your routine that way, because that's going to be the only way you're going to write, is if you treat it with like the discipline of the job that you want it to be essentially. So that would definitely be my advice.
And also to the camera again, why should they pick up your book?
I think you should pick up my book, Where We Come From, Rap, Home and Hope in Modern Britain. If you're a fan of the music, if you're not a fan of the music, but I think if you love reading personal stories, if you love reading narrative stories, if you love reading about Black British history and what life is like in contemporary Britain for like people who are living in communities right across the UK, I would recommend you pick up the book. I spent a long time writing it. I'd like to think it's pretty good. So
One last thing, if you can do a quick drop and say you're here with the Mandem Read and blah blah blah, you know.
Okay.
Subscribe to the channels and
Subscribe, follow.
Please drop your own like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Okay, cool.
so my name is blah blah.
Okay. My name's Aniefiok, also known as Neef. I'm here with the Mandem Read. Make sure you follow, like, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well, at Aniefiok Ekp. Pleasure to be here, man.
We're gonna put all the handles
Description at the bottom. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Been a pleasure. I was going to ask, have you got something following up?
Yeah.
Nothing concrete yet. I'm like kind of just in the process of like researching again.
Okay.
So but
so that might be a couple years, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it'll be quicker than a couple of years this time. It shouldn't take me 5 years this time, but
That's good, man. That's a solid.
You know what's mad? Yeah, my neighbor she's an author.
Okay,
and she works as an editor.
Right.
So obviously, because I'm pally with the neighbors and that, obviously I'm chatting to her and she's telling me about the writing lifestyle and whatnot. She was telling me like, obviously, when you write a book, you're ready to like get it published, whatnot. It's actually quite difficult to get a good agent.
Yeah.
So when you said, I just got my agent, that's how.
That is difficult.
The agent is meant to be quite, apparently it's meant to be challenging to get a good agent.
Yeah, that is difficult. I think, especially like where, say, I didn't know anyone that was an author or writer before, so it's like you're kind of like going into it blind. Whereas like when you get into publishing, you realize there's people that their dad is an author, and their parents. So they already have like these connections. So it's like mine was like, I was like, where am I starting with this? But what I did was I was looking for agents that were like around the same stage of career as me at the start, that I knew like they would have time to work on the book with me. So that was like a big thing that I did. So my agent Emma, at a place called C&W, she was just starting she'd only been there for like quite early. She was early on into her career.
She's popping now.
Yeah, no, she's doing really well. Yeah, she's doing really well. So that's how I found my agent.
Oh, fantastic.
There's like resources online as well you can look for that kind of just point you towards who are like some of the reputable agents in the UK. And then I just kind of went on their websites and started looking like which of these people here seem like they'd understand like what I'm trying to do. And then I just emailed them like kind of cold. A lot of cold emails has been like,
But that's the graft, isn't it? You got to do things, even though we're not seeing results from you. You got to keep going until you reach the rewards that you.
No, definitely.
I've got another question actually. What's your best book to film adaptation?
Book to film adaptation. I'm trying to think. You know,
or TV show.
Yeah. The best
TV
one.
show.
Yeah, like you know, you got Game of Thrones and
yeah. Obviously, Game of Thrones was
Yeah.
done really well. Season 1 to 5, anyway. But and then I'm watching Shogun.
Oh, yes.
Which was it?
Shogun.
Shogun.
Yeah, I've been watching. Like, I'm on episode 3.
What's Shogun about?
It's like it's set in,
It's set in like 1600 Japan.
yeah.
The time with the samurais and like when the Portuguese and the English stumbled upon Japan and tried to take control and
Typical.
Like, you see the
everywhere.
they're trying to colonize and they say it's like the Japanese Game of Thrones.
It's
deep,
How was? Have you guys read the book though?
No, I haven't read the book. But from what I heard about the book, I know they said it's like
But it's been a pleasure.
No, thank you.
Yes. It's been a pleasure, man.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, man.
appreciate
Appreciate your book. Make sure you guys go get this. It's available, I'm guessing, on Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon, Waterstone.
It's Waterstones. Oh, it's a bang.
All the independent bookshops as well. Yeah.
Big up Emma. Big up you.
we're gonna put the details in the description and where to get it and all that kind of stuff.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thank you for spending your Friday night off us, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.